He charges them to go and fulfill their mission, and then he says, the voice says, the frontiers of the ignorance shall recede, more and more souls shall enter into light, minds lit inspire the occult summoner here, and lives blaze with a sudden inner flame, and hearts grow enamored of the divine delight, and human wills tuned to the divine will. A divine force shall flow through tissue and cell, and take charge of breath and speech and act, and all the thoughts shall be a glow of suns, and every feeling a celestial thrill. A sudden bliss shall run through every limb, and nature with a mightier presence fill. Thus shall the earth open to divinity, and common natures feel the wide uplift. Illumine common acts with the Spirit's ray, and meet the deity in common things. Nature shall live to manifest secret God. The Spirit shall take up the human play. The earthly life become the life divine. The voice ceases, and suddenly she feels herself plunging down and down with the radiant Satyavan before her eyes. As she descends, she feels the warmth of the earth through her green leaves welcoming her, and she wakes up to see she is on earth. Satyavan is lying. She sits and watches for a while, takes in the whole scene, and she finds it is now time. He is sleeping. She wants him to wake up, and as she thinks he must wake up, he opens his eyes, and the first eyes he meets are hers. So he says, "What is it, Savitri? What was it? Where did we go far? Who was that strange, formidable shape, dark figure who was pursuing us? What has happened? That glow on your face? Was it a dream?" Then she answers him, "It was a dream and not a dream. All is well. Here, look at the trees, look at the green earth." And as they were talking, they hear, it is night, getting night, they hear a big noise, a commotion, a rumor, horse hooves of horses, people with crowns and lights, with lanterns, searching for something, a whole company of men on horses. They are searching. They have come, they have recovered their kingdom with their army and all that. They have come because these son and daughter, son's wife have not yet come back. And they are searching. And then somebody spies these people. Then they rush here. And the father looks at Savitri and tells her, "Savitri, it was not like you. You have kept him away from us so long. What shall I do with this kingdom? What shall I do with this sight if I cannot see my son?" And then they look at him, and he just smiles and Satyavan replied with his smiling lips, "Lay all on her. She is the cause of all. With her enchantment she has twined me round. Behold, at noon, leaving this house of clay, I wandered in far-off eternities, yet still a captive in her golden hands. I tread your little hillock called green earth, and in the moments of your transient sun, live glad among the busy works of men." Then all eyes turned their wondering looks, where stood a deepening redder gold upon her cheeks, with lowered lids the noble lovely child. Then one asked, "What gleaming marvel of earth or skies stands silently by human Satyavan to mark the brilliance in the desk of Eve? If this is she of whom the world has heard, wonder no more at any happy change. Each easy miracle of felicity, of her transforming heart the alchemy is. Then one spoke there who seemed a priest and sage. O woman soul, what light, what power revealed, working the rapid marvels of this day, opens for us by thee a happier age. Lo, she replies in a very low voice, awakened to the meaning of my heart, that to feel love and oneness is to love. And this, the magic of our golden change, is all the truth I know or seek or say, O sage. Wondering at her and her two luminous words, westward they turned in the fast gathering night, and they turned homewards, and at that time, lost in the halo of her musing brows, night splendid with the moon dreaming in heaven, in silver peace possessed her luminous reign. She brooded through the stillness on a thought, deep guarded by her mystic folds of light, and in her bosom nursed a greater dawn. However great the night, she always nurses a greater dawn in her bosom. That's the end of the epic. Break. 3:45 it was, it is 4 now.
We'll have a short break and then questions.
You win. Thank you.
So I think this is a question hour now. I think questions may be asked, not necessarily on what we have been reading, but any questions, since I will be leaving this country within 2 or 3 days, any things that have arisen during the course of my stay, where what I say could contribute to a mental clarity of understanding. Any question could be asked.
The inconscient was described, I think, as disorganized. Is that
Subconscious,
the subconscious? Disorganized.
where everything was there but not in its place.
Now, in the attempt to, it's like it's consciousness that organizes the subconscious, and doesn't ego get in the way of proper organization then, or am I?
The ego, up to a certain level, it functions as a coordinating point, as a fulcrum around which the whole machinery moves. So till a person has evolved enough to substitute the ego by the soul element, the ego has to be utilized. The ego is the pinpoint around which all the sensibilities are organized. So it is nature that has evolved the ego as a centralizing point. So, consciousness has to utilize the ego till a luminous substitute is available and one is in a position to activate and bring forward the soul, the enlightened element, which can replace the soul. That is why Sri Aurobindo says the ego was the helper, the ego is the bar. Ego has to be enlightened, and when the ego fully opens to the light, the ego disappears. But the ego in the spiritual context is not the ego in Freud or Jung and these Western systems of psychology. I find what ego means in the Eastern psychology is quite different from the ego here. For us, ego after a level is opposes a spiritual development. It vitiates. But here I find, if I have understood the Western approach correctly, ego is the point around which everything has to go on. Without the ego, they feel everything will be chaos. Am I right? Or may not be? Broadly. So, the concept of ego in Eastern psychology, particularly the Patanjali's aphorisms on yoga, ahankara, myness, I-ness, that is egoism, is a product of nature. The soul is a concentration of the spirit. So, a product of nature necessarily in ignorance. The soul is a point of light of the spirit. But here, whether they make that distinction, I do not know. That distinction between nature and spirit.
There's the growing notion of superconsciousness.
I see. Now, in the East, nature itself is looked upon as a lower formulation of consciousness, not something alien. Consciousness, self-organizing itself in ignorance, is nature. When it enters into the realm of knowledge, light, it becomes, a puissance or a power or a Shakti. It is tomorrow, I think tomorrow or Thursday I have to deal with that. The difference between Shakti and Prakriti. That is typical of Eastern psychology. In the East, they don't have a separate science as psychology. Nowadays, following the Western model, we have started talking of a science of the mind, Manasa Shastra and all that. But it is all taken as a part of science of consciousness. The Tantra is nothing except a doctrine of consciousness. The whole world is presented as a self-pervasion of a divine consciousness. And that consciousness is not just awareness, but is a dynamic awareness. This is what is called Chit Shakti by Muktanath in his book Chit Shakti Vilas. It is an old conception. And modern science is coming to that now. You may call it energy, you may call it sort of power. The world has power. Yeah.
He also used the term personality,
Huh.
and I wonder whether that might not have some relationship to what the Western idea of ego is.
Uh-huh.
Because it is said that in order to, as you raise your consciousness, you lose this ego, this sense of yourself, and this a sense of the image that one is trying to create, the role that one is playing, which is a false self. And I wonder if that might not enter into the Western, I don't know whether it enters into the Eastern idea, but the Western idea of ego, I think, includes that. It's almost something of egotism included within that concept.
You mean for them the personality and the ego are the same?
I think, yes, that there is a connection, that ego is dependent upon the personality, perhaps. I don't know whether that.
I am not very familiar with the theosophical thought, you know.
Personality serves the ego. It's in the service of the ego.
Now, in our spiritual psychology, personality, there is a surface personality and a real personality. The surface personality is highly ego infected, but the true personality is a projection of the soul in instrumental nature. Ego may be part of it, a dispensable part of it. The self, the central self, reflects itself on the mental level through the mind as the mental personality, as the emotional personality, as the vital personality, as the physical personality. Now, all these 4 or 5 personalities have to be integrated, combined, organized around the soul. Then one reaches a certain fullness. Normally, a person more a mental personality, the others are inchoate. Some are what are called practical people, whose physical and vital personality is developed, the mind follows it. A total culture requires that all the 4 or 5 parts of being are equally developed, paid attention to, and organized around this soul. So, personality is a kind of a purposeful formation built by the soul. The soul may build the personality of a poet in this birth. After reaching its fulfillment, it may choose the personality of a cobbler in its next birth. What has been gained in this birth as a poet remains as assimilated heritage in the causal body, subtle body of the self. So, across the lives, the soul goes on adding a number of personalities, and the more a person is evolved, you will find the more personalities he has. So, we say he is a multiple personality, he is a many-sided being, he is a many-sided genius, he is a versatile man. That versatility is a sign that he has acquired that much of maturity in evolution. It is a sign you are an artist, you are a poet, you are an executive, all these things. That is, when a person is able to do many things at a time, it is a sign that he has developed remarkably. When you can do only one thing in your life, it means there is much that you have still to learn. A many-sided concentration has to be simultaneous. Yeah.
May I ask a question on religion, early religion?
Yes.
In the days of Christianity, when the apostles lost Judas, immediately after that, they felt they had to replace him with the 12th apostle. And is there a connection also between the 12 apostles and the zodiac? If that's a fair question.
Wrong. What does it mean? I don't understand.
Zodiac is astrology.
Zodiac,
The
astrology.
zodiac and astrology.
Yeah.
Is there a connection between that and the 12 apostles?
This is a theory, you know. In the East also they give different versions. There are many such interesting possibilities. And there are certain occult truths of numbers. 6, 4, 12. And those truths express themselves at different levels in different forms. Now, whether exactly this zodiac thing came because of that, possible that truth governed that. But apart from the fact that there is this truth of numbers, I wouldn't commit myself to any firm conclusion in these matters. What does Ron think about it?
I don't,
Because you have made a study of Christian theology, that's why I'm asking.
I don't know anything about astrology though,
Uh-huh.
so I couldn't make the connection.
How about the replacement of Judas? Why did they feel that was necessary? Was it because of the number?
Why don't you answer that on my behalf?
Well, I don't think, that if they've got, they said that it, no, I can't answer. There's a good joke, but I wasn't.
Actually, I have not paid attention to this side of human development, you know.
I mean, one thing is that in Revelation, the number 12 is used a lot as an important number for the final manifestation. Maybe that's why.
See, because 12
Yeah.
represents creation. In the occult symbology, 12 represents creation. There are 12 months in a year, 12 revolutions, everywhere 12. So whether that has got something to do with it, we do not know. That age is so far removed from ours that we can speculate many things.
How many tribes?
They say, somebody said even Napoleon had 12 generals. And they tried to trace that he was the solar splendor and he had the satellites, like that. We don't know. But it is also a fact, there is, as I mentioned somewhere, that there is an old Jewish tradition that if 12 sincere people gather together in one spot and pray to God for revelation, He is bound to reveal Himself. 12 people. Only it is a sad commentary.
Jesus said if it's 3, I think he said if 3 get together. He said if 2 get together.
I think this is an older tradition, before Jesus, the Jewish tradition. It is an older tradition.
There were supposed to be 12 tribes of Israel.
I see.
But now we've gone metric, so I'm just saying.
Would you mind saying something about the metaphor of the Holy Family that was referred to in Savitri? The bridegroom, you said this.
These, they utilize the existing human relations as symbols for the manifesting truths. The bride and the bridegroom really stand for the male and the female principles in creation. The male and the female are the same reality in two poises, the static and the dynamic, the presiding and the executive. Now, at a human level, this is pictured in the form of a bride and bridegroom, or the Lord and his spouse, whether in Christian thing or Indian, Hindu, or in Sufi. These things go on because they take existing human relations. Now, in India, there are some mystic poets in a certain age when the religion of devotion prospered, blossomed. There are a number of saints who came and propagated this approach of love, and a number of poets wrote poems using physical relations of love, husband, wife, lover, beloved, and all that, but having always the divine, the higher significance in their mind. They passed away, but their poems have been doing such harm to human posterity that they are taken literally, and the relations between God and man, God, all these are conceived in erotic terms. So now people have had to write commentaries explaining that this is erotic imagery, it is there, but there is no erotic fact. So when we speak in terms of families, bride, bridegroom, it is all right in these such epics and things, but we have always to understand them as such.
Well, what I was specifically referring to that I wasn't able to get clear was the part of the psyche or whatever represented by the husband of Savitri, the fact that he was to die in 12 months, the symbolism attached to all that.
Here, in this context, he represents the human soul, man, and she represents the divine grace, which specially comes to deliver man from the jaws of death. And he is the divine soul that takes a human form. That is an eternal fact, because our souls are divine. And Satyavan literally means one who carries the truth. Yes, Satyavan, one who carries the truth. So each one of us carries a truth in our being. It may be little, it may be inchoate, and as we grow, as we develop, that truth acquires a form, becomes an entity. That entity develops into a person. And a highly evolved person has a soul personality. And when that personality joins the original divine personality, the man and divine become one. The soul and the oversoul become one.
From listening to the reading today, I got the vision of the salvation of mankind as a whole,
Yes.
as opposed to just individuals being saved.
Exactly.
Which is also a Christian vision, and Chardin and some of the modern
Yes,
philosophers.
yes.
And I'm wondering, there also many people think that we're on the edge of a new
Yes.
phase of consciousness and spiritual development.
Yeah.
And coming closer, I guess, to that mankind, that goal of mankind saved as a race or as a whole. Would you like to address yourself to that, or do you see that coming, or would you agree with that, or?
No, I do perceive and in a certain sense experience this fact of this addition of a collective dimension to man's spiritual destiny. Hitherto, man's spiritual destiny was individual, to save himself, to unite with God. But now the stress is on the collective aspects. It is considered and realized to be an extreme selfishness, spiritual selfishness, to work for one's own salvation, leaving the entire society where it was. So, today the stress is on relating individual progress to the betterment of society at every step. A man can be as perfect only as the society is perfected. So, whether in Chardin or in Sri Aurobindo or in modern thought of spiritual persuasion, individual liberation is made the first foundation or a radical step leading to a collective growth. But an imperfect man cannot help the world. So, man needs to liberate himself. Man needs to acquire a certain light, liberation and strength and power. To that extent, spiritual life has to lay stress on individual equipment. But that is not the goal and the end. That is an indispensable step, a radical step, which enables you to play your part in God's manifestation. Otherwise, your contribution will always be a flawed contribution. And after achieving a certain inner liberation, one gets the capacity of identifying oneself in consciousness with the universe. Otherwise, you identify yourself only at the ego level. You inject your own notions, ideas, conceptions on others. But when you have acquired that soul quality and consciousness, really become one with the universal Godhead, universal humanity, and you can meaningfully contribute to their development. And the world is moving towards this stage where God's glory in terms of knowledge, joy, power are being increasingly revealed and established on earth. So, the old conception, Christian conception of the kingdom of God on earth and Sri Aurobindo's conception of this Gnostic humanity, Chardin's conception of humanity finding its culmination in a Christosphere, I think they all point to one thing. The terminology may differ, the processes may differ, but broadly and significantly the goal is the same. Scholars are not agreed whether in Chardin's thought the culmination is to be on earth or beyond there. Some say his Christosphere is to be taken in a kind of symbolic way, that it is Christ consciousness that will be manifested on earth and humanity will find its culmination and unity in that on earth. So, we do not know, particularly I do not know, I have not specialized in Chardin's works, but if we have all understood in spiritual experience that the kingdom of God is here. The kingdom of God is the kingdom of higher consciousness, and it has to be manifested on earth. The earth is the destined place where the God's glory has to be worked out and manifested and established. So to that I think all major streams of spiritual thought are moving today, and that is my conception and content of the new age.
May I ask another one?
Yeah?
In the early Egyptian civilization, do you think that there were possibly some clones from the Atlantean?
You know, these attempts have been going on in different traditions, different civilizations from the beginning of time. And the fact that these attempts are being made show that nature has this intention. Nature is trying